YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul has been making some big moves when it comes to his boxing career. Many people have questioned his skills as a boxer, but Donald Cerrone thinks Jake Paul is a good fighter and wants to take him on. This retired UFC star isn't going to trash on the younger of the two Paul brothers. The mixed martial artist said he actually considers Jake Paul to be good at boxing, and even says he has a lot of respect for everything Jake has done for the world of combat sports in general. The Cowboy only has good things to say about the problem child's boxing skills.
Again, the left hook upstairs by Paul. 1-2.
His fights against Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, and Anderson Silva were probably enough for Cerrone to recognize Paul's skills. In a talk with Thick Boy Studios, Donald Cerrone spoke about how mad the Jake Paul phenomenon is and how everyone wants to call him out now. The retired MMA fighter actually compared Jake to Conor McGregor in this regard and talked about the American boxer as a big money fight.
Well, there he goes. See, Jake, one thing I'll give Jake credit for is from his first fight that I saw to this, he's improved.
This is why Donald thinks everyone wants a piece of Jake Paul, for all the money that's involved in fighting him. The Cowboy also talked about how everyone says that Jake Paul's fights are rigged.
He's fallen in for the same trap as he did in the first fight.
But Donald thinks whatever Jake throws are real strikes and shots. He says Jake's been practicing and working on his boxing techniques, and that it shows when he beats people up. For Donald Cerrone, Jake Paul has something going for him, and there isn't any missed hype when it comes to the YouTuber turned boxer.
Silva's pace too at his age. Yeah, he's been pretty busy. Look at it.
So how likely are Jake Paul and Donald Cerrone to fight? Judging from the way he was talking about fighting Jake in his conversation with Thick Boy Studios, it doesn't seem like the retired UFC fighter is actively looking to go out of his way to try and arrange a fight with the American boxer. Though at the same time, Cerrone would take the chance to fight Jake Paul if he's ever given the opportunity.
As well, oftentimes the leg kick and the elbow rest. Yeah. He went high.
When he was asked if he would like to fight Jake Paul, Donald answered with a question of his own. How could I say no to millions of dollars? Donald said he'd definitely go and fight Jake Paul if given the opportunity. He also added that he isn't going to sit here and talk the problem child down by calling him worthless, YouTube trash. Donald even addressed Jake Paul directly, saying if he wants to throw money his way, then he's with him. Donald Cerrone may have retired from MMA back in July 2022, following his fight with Jim Miller at UFC 276.
Against Donald Cerrone.
And exactly what we expect in the first round of this fight.
But it looks like he's looking to make some big money now. The retired Cowboy has a lot of respect for the American YouTuber and would for sure take him on. It just looks like he doesn't want to chase Jake Paul for it. But the reason he gave for his retirement may surprise you. Donald Cerrone said he doesn't love it anymore. Back at UFC 276 in 2022, Donald Cerrone was in the octagon up against Jim Miller, who made him submit in the second round of the match. After the match, the UFC American star put his trademark cowboy hat and gloves in the center of the ring and also announced that he was going to be retiring from the UFC. In his post-match interview in the cage, Cerrone spoke to Joe Rogan, thanking the crowd in Las Vegas and saying he's happy that his boys could have been there.
That's 15 seconds. He taps. Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Wow.
He told Joe Rogan that he doesn't love being in the UFC anymore. Cerrone said that it's difficult for him to get up and prepare for fights at this point.
Body lock, he sunk the choke in with the top hand and rotated him over now towards the bottom hand. This is technically perfect.
He also added that this was the lengthiest camp he's had in a while now. The American mixed martial artist added that he isn't complaining about anything to anyone, but rather that he's just fallen out of love with it. The UFC legend said he's going to be a movie star soon, and that one should know when it's time to call it quits. And this was it for him. He talked about how the event was perfect in Las Vegas with the sold-out crowd. Donald Cerrone added that he's had a good career and hopes he'll be in the UFC Hall of Fame one day.
Donald shut him down and showed him why there's a difference between the guys coming up
The Cowboy finished his announcement by saying thank you to the UFC for all the opportunities they've given him. Paul obviously ended up getting word of this, and now that we've seen what Donald wants,
Oh, good right hand by Cowboy. Stunned him. This is back and forth. It was a good...
we can see what the YouTuber turned boxer thinks. And honestly, he doesn't look too interested. Jake Paul says he's done taking on old dudes. After hearing Donald Cerrone call him out, Jake Paul responded by saying that he's moving on from fighting old guys. Jake Paul has been rising up the combat sports ranks with every fight. And along the way, he's been called out constantly by many fighters.
Bang, right to the
World champion Jean Pascal and
Get my
also
money,
cruiserweight
Jake. Get
contender.
my money.
And this includes fighters like Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, so he hasn't had any lack of choice when it comes to picking opponents. And the YouTuber turned boxer has gotten a lot of criticism for not having fought a real boxer. And some people focus more on how he fights retired MMA fighters who haven't been at their best in a while now. The American boxer has tried to fight off these criticisms by taking on big opponents, but most of those fights had to be called off for one reason or another, like his fight with Tommy Fury that had to be canceled since Fury couldn't get into the USA so he could fight Jake, or how his fight with Hasim Rahman was canceled because of the weigh-in problems. And his talks with Paddy the Baddy Pimblett don't seem to be heading anywhere for the time being either, despite Jake willing to pay the UFC star from Liverpool $1 million. So while it doesn't look too likely for the two to fight anytime soon, Jake Paul did talk about a possible mid-February fight. There have been rumors that the problem child Jake Paul might return to boxing sometime around mid-February, and multiple former UFC fighters already wanted a piece of him, and his money too. On January 2nd, in a talk with MMA YouTuber The Schmo, Jake Paul was asked about a potential bout against the former UFC lightweight fighter. This was after Donald Cerrone called him out and said he'd be open to the idea of a fight. Jake Paul responded to these questions by talking about how he's tired of beating up old dudes like Donald Cerrone. The problem child from Ohio added that he's been trying to find someone a little younger to fight, but said that they're all too scared to fight him. And he talked about how they're all trying to just keep their own record safe. It seems like Jake really thinks there's no one that can beat him in a fight. It looks like the mid-February fight with the problem child isn't going to be between Jake and Donald, but according to rumors, the American boxer's fight could end up being against Tommy Fury. Fury's camp still says the possibility of a fight is still on, despite Tommy not being able to get into the United States to fight Jake as of yet. We can't really say for sure who he'll fight though, as there hasn't been any concrete news as of yet. But if Jake Paul does end up getting what he wants, he's going to be in the ring standing opposite someone who's actually in their prime for once. Then we can see if his critics were maybe right about him all along or not. See you in the next video.